Welcome to the Stray Pointers podcast, where seemingly ordinary people join us for extraordinary discussions. You're watching Season 3, Episode 11 of the Stray Pointers podcast. This episode was recorded on November 11th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Lullis. For more information about the show, including the show notes for this episode, please visit straypointers.com. Rejoining the show today are Cameron Cunning and Juan Vazquez. Guys, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having us back.
Yep.
So today is our annual Advent of Code episode. This year, we're getting ready for the 2025 Advent of Code, and there's a few changes we'll talk about toward the tail end of the podcast here. I wanted to quickly recap the approaches we took and goals from last year, if we could, programming languages. I used Google's Go programming language because I wanted to try to get the problems done as quickly as I could, and I kind of felt like I was cheating some of the time. Because it just kind of stayed out of my way. It's just never been it's never been a pleasant language for me to work in. So this year I thought I'd try something a little different. We'll talk about that in a bit. So last year I just wanted to get through the problems.
Yeah, last year I used Elixir and I plan to use that again this year. Just really liking what I'm getting from the language. And there was one problem that I used Prolog, and Cameron, you and I talked a little bit about how we solved that particular one. It was a graph of some sort. I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't a graph. Do you remember the problem?
I don't.
Yeah, maybe sometime in this episode we might jump over and remember what that was. But it fit Prolog really well. But my mastery of Prolog, there's no mastery and Prolog and me don't those three words don't go together well. So it was a really great learning opportunity to use that language, even though I was using Elixir for the first, I think, 2 weeks, and then I kind of petered out.
Yeah. Last year I used Prolog, and the intent was to try and just use these problems as a way of learning Prolog and getting more comfortable with it. And before that, I hadn't really used it since college. So in some sense, I think it was successful because I kind of got sort of comfortable with using Prolog and thinking in that way. Although I didn't get through many problems. The problems were just tough to apply Prolog to, with all the parsing and string manipulation and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna try that this year. I'm gonna try a language I'm a little bit more comfortable with.
Let's talk about that. What are you going to try this year?
I'm gonna go back to Rust. I don't know what my fixation on Rust is. I just kind of like the idea of using a lower level language with maybe some modern features. So we'll give it a try.
And your goal, is it to become just more familiar with Rust, more proficient at it?
Yeah, I'd like to become, more familiar with Rust, more proficient at it. Yeah, but I really want to get through more problems this year. I think number of problems solved is my benchmark this year.
Very good. Very good. So it's on.
It's on.
All right.
Well, you're in luck. There's less problems for us.
Yeah,
Right.
we'll get to that. Okay, so Juan, you said you're going back to Elixir, or you're sticking with Elixir.
Yeah, I'm sticking with that.
Now you've continued just to code with Elixir off and on throughout the year, have you not?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So
just getting familiar with the language. Nothing like, even from a hobby perspective, I haven't gone after anything that was too ambitious. Just tinkering with it, kind of learning the ins and outs, and its different approach. I'm a big fan of closure, and so just kind of seeing where things
Okay.
are a little bit different.
Okay. So the language that I chose this year, I went through several. Rust was certainly a candidate. I looked at Zig, and I just don't think that I've had the time to spend with those that I would need to. That and Rust and I never seem to. Rust never sticks with me. I can be in a really good rhythm with a book, a lot of momentum, and if I stop, then it seems like I'm back to square zero in a short enough amount of time. I did take a look at Apple's Swift programming language because there was a twofold reason there. I wanted to be able to do some UIs on my Mac, and I thought that that would be an opportune programming language to use. So I've dabbled in that a little bit, but I don't think that I can become proficient enough to tackle any of these problems, even with the console version of Swift in time for the competition. So what I went back to, I say back to because I took a run at this almost 10 years ago, is the Digital Mars deprogramming language by Walter Bright, originally by Walter Bright. Now it's open source and has contributions by just a number of individuals. And I'll tell you one of the factors that have made a difference for me this year is this book, The Deprogramming Language by Andrei Alexandrescu. And the book itself, it has some interesting forewords by the D creator Walter Bright and by C++ super guy Scott Myers. So the intros to this book are themselves worth reading. But Andre's approach to the language is better than a couple. I went the cheap route on books when I looked at D in 2016, and you get what you pay for. This book makes all the difference. So if any of you out there are going to take a run at this, I would highly recommend picking up this book.
Cool.
And really, what I wanted to get out of this was let me stop sharing this image now. What I wanted to get out of this was both some more familiarity with the deprogramming language, which it has some of the elements of Go that I was hoping for in a language, built-in regular expressions, associative arrays as native constructs in the language itself, slices for arrays and pieces of strings and that sort of thing. And it compiles on all of my machines, so I can compile on Windows, I can compile on the Mac, I can compile on Linux because I'm still not quite sure what machine I'm going to use for the competition. Probably the newer Mac, but I'm not sure about that yet. I wanted to mention today. Hold 1 second, please. I've got a lawn crew outside here. So apologies if there's any noise leaking in here. I saw on Hacker News this morning that there's a gent who is using the Zork Z machine for this year's competition, and he's using the adventure gaming language Inform to do his work, which is if you guys get a chance, I will put the link to that in the show notes for this episode. But he actually walks through the elements of that language and the approaches to a 2024 problem in Inform. So I thought that was kind of interesting because in Inform's kind of, it's not as rigorous of a procedural language as I would be used to. It's meant for adventure gaming and that sort of thing, but it can certainly be bent into doing what he's trying to do. And then it'll run on a myriad of machines as long as he sticks to the original Z machine architecture for the output that ran all of the sort games. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I am always impressed this time of year when we start the advent of the code is what people do with different languages and how they solve. I've seen some visual stuff. I know we might have mentioned this even here. Microsoft Project was used for one, and just how inventive people are.
Yep.
For the sake of being inventive, have fun with it.
Yep.
Do some things out of the ordinary. That's part of the joy, I think, of for me. It's seeing what other people are doing that go off the beaten path.
Can I ask what materials you guys are using to prep yourself for the upcoming event to familiarize yourself with the language and or tools that you're using?
Yeah, so about 2 weeks ago, I started going through 2015 Advent of Code just to get back into
Why
thinking about.
2015?
That's my favorite year because it's the year I actually completed, and it was the first year.
Okay.
It was the first year, so it was nice to go back because long enough time had passed that I forgot what the questions were, and I didn't look at any of my old code. So I've been doing that. But because I've solved them when I've gotten stuck on, hey, how do I think about this? We hadn't talked about this offline because yourself, Cameron, and I we have our chat that we throughout the year talk about things.
Hmm.
I started using Chat GPT. Say, how would it think differently about how it solves it versus what I did? And so after I've solved it, or if I've gotten stuck, I'm like, okay, what would it do? And picking
Hmm.
up new things within the language, like, oh, okay. And some of the things I'm not sure are patterns. They might be anti-patterns, but it's one of those things where you start to learn for me, learning the language, like, oh, I didn't know you could do that, or oh, it's using that in a different way than I would have thought. So going through 2015, I don't plan to use it at all. Any Gen AI or helping during this competition, only maybe after I've solved it to see, hey, how would I have done it differently? And maybe there's some things that I pick up, like some new things in my tool belt.
Sure.
So yeah,
Cameron?
that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, really at this point I'm just doing problems on Code Wars, which codewars.com is like uh, it's it's just like random little much smaller programming problems than you would find in Advent of Code. Much easier, much simpler. Um, and I've been doing those in Rust just to kind of, get and maintain some familiarity with the syntax. So I'm not going to have to look up how to do every little thing when I'm attacking one of these Advent of
Sure.
Code problems.
Hmm.
So I've been doing maybe one of those a night for, I don't know, a week and a half now. Um, I think I will probably, I'm not going to say I'm not going to use Gen. The only way that I'm going to use it is for basically documentation, for looking up, how do I, how do I, use an array in Rust, stuff like that, stuff that I'm not going to be too familiar with.
Sure.
Uh,
Sure. Okay. Okay. So they are making some changes this year, though, guys. And I think it benefits the three of us in particular. Um, one of the changes is instead of 25 problems, one per day right through Christmas, they're only going to have 12 problems. And it's going to be the December 1st through the 12th, which works out great for me because this is shortly before that I lose interest, or the holidays just get to be too busy and I can't devote the time that I need to do that. So for me personally, I think that's going to be a little better, and I actually might finish this year's competition. Um, Thoughts on that?
I think, yeah, there's more likelihood that I'll finish as well. My biggest problem is, the time requirement and the fatigue of doing it every single day,
Sure.
because most of these problems are, they'll take me 2 to 3 hours to get through. I'm not in the competition as far as as speed goes. I just can't do them that fast. Um, so, I don't know that I'm going to be able to maintain pace and do one every day for 12 days, but I think maybe between December and January, I could get 12 done.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll plan for our follow-up episode in January then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Juan, did the reduction in the number of problems affect you at all?
Yeah, I mean, not from an output of what I would accomplish, because I would still probably. I think we got through like 20 days last year.
Mhm.
So if anything, it's going to free up the rest of the rest of the month for me. And so that might be a change for my family to say, whoa, you're not working on stuff in your office. So,
Good.
you know, I was just thinking through it'll be interesting to see what the problems are because maybe they're 3 times as hard.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to bring up is there has to be, we'll talk about one more thing here in a bit, but there has to be a curve that they're throwing us with these 12 problems because normally the first few problems are fairly easy and then it just seems to go, it just seems to rise in level of complexity pretty quickly. Do you think that that's going to happen sooner now?
Time will tell.
Yeah, and I was also wondering, the patterns that they use for a lot of these problems, they reiterate every year. So if you've got an idea of how to load an array and manipulate a two-dimensional array and look at all directions in a square around an object in an array, if you've already got canned routines to do that, you've done this before. You kind of have a mental model for some of this stuff. I half wonder if they're going to have completely different twists on the problems this year.
I hope so, because yeah, the scanning a two-dimensional array, looking every direction in a two-dimensional array, it gets kind of old
Yep.
and feels tedious after a point. So that'd be great if they do that.
The other change is that they are no longer having a global leaderboard, which is good for me because I could never make it on there no matter how quickly I finished a problem in a few minutes a year or so ago and proudly posted it on there and I was like 30,000th or something, something along those lines. So I didn't even make it to the first few pages of the global leaderboard. Um, what do you what do you think the repercussions of that are going to be, if any?
Well, I
Well,
don't
for
know.
me personally, there won't be any. I was never one to stay up till I never had the motivation to stay up till midnight to try and compete when I knew I wasn't really going to be able to compete anyways. So,
Sure. Well, to be fair, it's 11 o'clock our time.
true.
Once I realized that, I start staying up for the problems.
Yeah, I would stay up, and then the next morning would be rough.
Yeah, it would
I
be,
don't know, during a work week.
but I'd have
So
bragging rights, hopefully. So,
that's what keeps you up, right?
yep,
You're like,
yep,
okay.
yep.
There's always, I think we talked about this last year, is more of the local communities that I was on, those leaderboards that I was
Hmm.
competing with.
So
I've hardly ever looked at that global leaderboard, but I think it if you've linked your GitHub account and you're on the global, I believe you can look at the solution. So I did find myself using it for that. So maybe a repercussion is there's less chance to view people's solutions from a global perspective versus
mhm.
your more local. So I mean, I
Yeah,
could see that
yep,
as a repercussion, but
that is true. I usually go after the fact, after the competition's
yeah.
over, and there's a couple of curated lists by programming language, and I like to go through those and even revisit those. Because when I was looking for the different languages I wanted to use, by the way, D isn't very well represented in past competitions for these curated lists of solutions. Um, I would go and see, okay, well, how did they solve this in Ruby or some such thing? And I would look and think, man, I could never write a Ruby script that small to do this problem. I just, mine would be much more brute force than, a lot of the examples were that way. But I like to go over those after the fact and take a look. Now, last year we had our own leaderboard, and we had a friend of mine, and we mentioned it on the podcast last year. So a couple folks also joined, and I looked at their solutions. So um, that was kind of fun. One of the guys that joined our leaderboard last year did a lot of his solutions in Fortran,
Yeah. We had
which
Haskell as well, right?
I think we did. Yeah, there was a gent that had some Haskell solutions, which was kind of cool watching those. What I've done this year is I blew away the old board and my fear, and I don't want to. Uh, well, I would rather that we just kind of keep it to ourselves. With the absence of a global leaderboard, I just wonder what others are going to do, and I don't want to publicize ours this year. You can also, and if you guys want to do this, I'm up for it. There is a way to generate a read-only link to our leaderboard if you want to, if you want to share with other folks. But I'm going to confine this year our private leaderboard just to the three of us and one other gent who joined the competition last year.
Yeah, that's fine with me. But if anybody wants to feel better about their skills, they're more than happy to look at how long it takes for me to solve it.
Yeah, that's I don't think yeah, I'd rather not advertise it with that as a slogan. See, he could have been better than these three guys.
Yeah.
So anything else you guys want to talk about related to the approach or this year's competition?
Before I forget, I did find day 23 of last year was called LAN Party, and that's the one I used the prologue. That was where you needed to find connections between these. I know earlier when we started the show, I was struggling for the name of what it was called, but it was day 23 LAN Party for anybody out there that hasn't.
Yeah, I don't think I made it anywhere near that far in the I did them onesie twosie a little bit after that, after I had gone through sequential, but I don't think I did day 23. I don't If I looked at it, I sure didn't get it to work. I'm going to put my GitHub repo for these on the show notes. Do you guys want me to do the same with yours?
I need to recreate mine. I had blown it away last year because I think after all these years, I found out, or maybe remembered that I had parts of the puzzles that were not meant to be published, that were asked for us
Oh
not
yeah,
to.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
think maybe it was the inputs that
Yep.
I had. I can't recall, but I need to
Yep.
recreate mine.
Yep. They've asked that the puzzles themselves and the inputs that you refrain from putting those on a code repo.
Yeah, and I had both for a number of years. Last year was the first that I hadn't been submitting that, so I just need to go back, clean up some stuff, and then I'll give you the link.
So how about the Reddit community for the advent of code? They usually have a post for each day. And last year I posted a couple of those, and I think it drew a little traffic to my solutions. I don't know, to be honest with you, that there's enough interest in the D programming language that if I made the front page of Reddit, that anybody would stop by the repo. So we'll have to see. But do you guys ever go out there and post when you've finished a solution?
No, I never have.
Or have you ever checked there to see discussions on they have spoiler-free discussions on some of the problems too, in addition to posting.
I have checked those. What I tend to have a comprehension challenge when it comes to some of these problems where I think it means this way. And so I've been working on it for maybe an hour or two and I go, oh, I'm missing something. What is, and then I'll go to those communities and see, oh yeah, it was actually meant in this manner. And so, which is funny enough, when I was going to 2015 again, I was reading the problem and solving it one way. And I asked ChatGPT, like, how would you solve this? And when I looked through its code solutions, I was like, oh, that's the piece I was missing. I was thinking I needed to manipulate a string this way, and it really was saying, do it this way. And it would have saved me like 40 minutes of toil.
It's interesting.
So
Yeah,
I tend to, good.
that's a very frustrating aspect of these problems, is that you can often read them and interpret them one way and have the correct solution based on your interpretation, but you just keep getting a wrong answer. You're like, why am I getting a wrong answer?
Yeah.
And you completely misinterpreted the problem.
It's a humbling experience, I'll tell you.
Well,
And it definitely has colored the way that I ask questions of others when I'm in a professional environment. Like, how are you doing this? What's your thoughts? Versus coming in thinking I have the solution. So over the years, like that continual frustration of, oh, I might not have all the information, or I better understand what this solution looks like
Sure.
before I come in hard and fast on some. So
Yeah, I hope that I can do that because I tend to just draw both guns and start shooting. So we'll see. Okay,
Ready,
well,
fire, aim, huh?
that's right. That's worked for me well in the past. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for being on again. We'll meet up again in January sometime, and we'll talk about how well we fared.
Great. Look forward to it.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching today's show. Let's do this again soon. Take care.